Hi, I'm Margaret Read MacDonald. I'm going to tell you an Appalachian folk tale. I'm born and raised in southern Indiana, so I'm going to use my own accent to tell it. It is called Old One-Eye. I put it in a book I wrote called 20 Tellable Tales. You can also find it in Grandfather's Stories by Richard Chase, I believe. One time there was an old woman lived in a log cabin way up in the hills. Now, she'd been saving her money, and she had a leather bag full of gold coins hid up by the chimney corner. Well, every night she'd sit in her cabin and she'd rock in her rocking chair back and forth, back and forth. She was carding her wool. You know, they had those carding combs, those metal combs that had just card the wool and smooth it out so you could spin it. Screech, scratch, screech, scratch, screech, scratch, a rocking and a carding and a rocking and a carding. And after a while, she'd commence to yawn. Well, when she yawned 3 times, she knew it was time to go to bed and have her midnight snack before she went to bed. She had an old dried salt fish hanging by its tail over by the chimney corner. She'd been eating on that fish every night. She'd get her butcher knife, take a chunk out. That was her midnight snack before she'd go to bed. She'd been eating on that fish so long, she'd already ate out one eye. And on account of that, she called that fish Old One-Eye. Well, now remember, every night she'd sit there, rocking in a carding, rocking in a carding. When she yawned 3 times, take a chunk out of one eye, chaw it up, go to bed. Now, into that neighborhood, there come 3 robbers. They heard about that money she'd been saving, that gold coins up in that leather pouch by the chimney corner, and they figured they'd get up there. And as soon as she went to bed, they'd sneak in there and they'd get that gold. The head of the robbers took him and hid him in the holler down behind her house. He said, we're going to wait till she falls asleep, and then we'll get it. Now, the head of the robbers only had one eye. Other than got poked out in a fight one time, and on account of that, he was called Old One-Eye, the robber chief. So Old One-Eye called his first robber and said, I want you to go up there, and I want you to spy on her, and as soon as she goes to bed, you come down and let us know. We'll get up there. We'll get that gold. So the first robber, he climbed up there and he got up to her log cabin, and he found a spot up by the chimney corner on the outside of the house, and he leaned against that chimney corner and he pulled some of the caulking out between the logs. In those days we'd put like cotton caulking in to keep the wind out. He pulled that caulking out and made a little hole that he could peek through, and he peeked in there. She hadn't gone to bed yet. She was still sitting there, rocking in a carding and a rocking in a carding and a rocking in a carding and a rocking in a carding, screech, scratch, screech, scratch, and pretty soon she yawned. Oh, sakes of mercy me, she said, there's one that's come tonight. And she looked over where that salt fish, that one-eyed fish, was hanging by the fireplace, and she said, that's one that's come tonight. If 2 more comes, I'll get out my butcher knife. That robber outside, looking in that little hole, thought she was looking directly at him. He jumped up and run down the holler. She's a witch, she's a witch, One-Eye, she's a witch. She looked right through them logs and seen me. She said, there's one that's coming. If 2 more comes, I'm getting a butcher knife. We better just get out of here. Old One-Eye said, you were just chicken. How can she have seen you out there? You go. And he called the second robber. And the second robber went up there, and he got up and found that same little crack, and he looked in that same little hole through the logs, and he could see her in there. Oh, she hadn't gone to bed yet. She's still sitting there, rocking in a carding, screech, scratch, screech, scratch, screech, scratch, and pretty soon she yawned. Oh, sakes of mercy me, she said, that is 2 that's come tonight. Looked over to where that old one-eyed fish was hanging. She says, if 1 more comes, I'll get up my butcher knife. Laws, that second robber thought she'd seen him. He ran down the hill. She's seen me, One-Eye. She did. She is a witch. She looked right through them logs and said, that's 2 that's coming. If 1 more comes, I'm getting out my butcher knife. We got to get out of here. Old One-Eye said, you are both just scared. I'll go up myself and see what's with that old woman. And he climbed the hill, and he put his good eye up to that crack between the logs, and he looked in there. She hadn't gone to bed yet. She's still sitting there, Rockin' in the garden, rockin' in the garden, rockin' in the garden, rockin' in the garden, screech, scratch, screech, scratch. And pretty soon she yawned for the third time. Whoa! Oh, law, she said, that is 3 that's come tonight. Time to get out my butcher knife and take a chunk out of you, old one-eye. And she come for that one-eyed fish. Laws, that one-eyed robber thought she was coming for him. He ran down the hill. She is a witch. She knew my name. Said, I'm going to take a chunk out of you, old one-eye. Run for your lives, men, run for your lives. And they run down the holler, and they never come back anymore. And that old lady just went over, took her butcher knife, took a chunk out of that one-eyed fish, chawed it up real good, went to bed and slept right sound. And that's the story. If you want to tell the story, look in this book called 20 Tellable Tales that I wrote, and you can find a version that'll be easy to tell.